With sweat and toil, Chinese workers push forward the march of rail. For half a century, the Chinese Communist Party has knitted its vast empire together by railway track. Trains have brought trade, troops and Chinese migrants to the furthest reaches of the country, helping Beijing to maintain tight political control. Now it is building the last link in its network, a railway line across the mountainous province of Tibet. Officials insist it will bring equality and prosperity.
不可能的，汉族人办是不可能。青藏铁路真能给藏族人民带来幸福。这个青藏铁路叫做是幸福线，是幸福线，带来幸福。
But many fear it will complete China's destruction of Tibetan culture and freedom.
Within a few years' time, I think then Tibetan, with its unique culture heritage, then may become history. So there is very serious danger, very serious danger.
Every year, 100 million Chinese are on the move, roaming the world's third largest country in search of work. These job seekers are heading to the very end of the line, the desert city of Golmud near the frontier of Tibet. Some hope to work on the new railway being built from Golmud to the Tibetan capital Lhasa. The area is normally off limits to foreign journalists. But today, the Chinese government is taking a group of us to see the area's investment potential. Even so, our Chinese minders will try to control everything we see and do, as we find within minutes of boarding the train. So why can't we film? Why can't we film the train? Can we go to another carriage? Can we speak to the people who are on this train?
According to the railway regulation, no.
We managed to get as far as the next carriage, filled with migrating workers.
Hello.
Within seconds, police ordered us back. At least a dozen police and plainclothes security agents made sure we didn't try again. By dawn, we had travelled hundreds of kilometres across the Gobi Desert to the Tibetan plateau. For centuries, this was traditional Tibetan land. But the communists parcelled it off into the neighbouring province of Qinghai. Then they extended the railway line here to tap its mineral resources. The Tibetans were soon overwhelmed by migrant Chinese. Today, as every day, most of the new arrivals are from China's dominant ethnic group, the Han Chinese. They make up 90% of Golmud's 200,000 residents. Less than 5,000 are ethnic Tibetans. It is very much China's vision of the future. At a press briefing, officials spoke glowingly of the industrial potential of this traditional Tibetan land and the rich prospects for Chinese migrants. But the developments so far appear to have been of little benefit to ethnic Tibetans. We were taken to an oil refinery on the outskirts of Golmud. It's one of the largest in China, with close to 1,000 workers. How many of them are Tibetans?
Tibetan? How many Tibetans?
Do you have any Tibetans working here?
Someone is little.
In fact, there are none. The workers we were allowed to film told us later they had never even seen a Tibetan at the plant. But China insists development is improving Tibetans' lives. To prove it, the tour rolled on to a carefully selected ethnic Tibetan village by the scenic backdrop of Lake Qinghai. The authorities have settled about 80% of the nomads who used to herd their livestock around the lake. They get a mud brick house and a small pen for their animals. Critics accuse the government of putting Tibetans on marginal land while giving the best to well-connected Han Chinese. But the herdsmen who officials presented for interview had only praise for the ruling party.
共产党后边，这些现在我们这个牧民的，各方面都提高了呗，其他家庭有这个开车的，骑摩托的，这些都是党和国家，共产党和国家赐给我们的。
Having received the correct answers, the minders saw no need for us to question him further.
If we stay here for a long time, maybe we miss the train.
We have plenty of time to get the train, plenty of time. But later, when we slipped away from our minders, we found some ethnic Tibetans less enthralled with life under the Han Chinese. Young Song runs a tea house for Tibetan truck drivers, taking goods between Lhasa and Golmud. They have as little to do with Chinese as possible.
我到这儿来，不喜欢，跟汉人打交道的很少。 大部分都是给我们自己的藏族，是开车的呀，是，大部分都是我给西藏的人打交道，给汉族人很少打交道。
News that China is building a railway to Tibet has increased their worries about the future. The truck drivers fear they will lose their livelihood, but they fear even more what it will do to their homeland.
咱的火车的将来来啥的，包个机子、电卡，等到充满的空手看着的，大等的小伙计，包了等的大都有嘛的。
Bai Ma is one Tibetan who has benefited. He has risen through the communist hierarchy to become Qinghai's deputy governor. He's a staunch defender of the party and the new railway.
你自己的生产的产品可以能到市场上去交流交换。过去藏族人民不要说坐过火车，连火车都没见过，能坐上火车，能坐得起，然后把商品拿到外地去交换。
Further up the highway, we found some Tibetan nomads who really are looking forward to the railway. Giza and his friend Tashi Dawa were trying to flag down passing trucks to take their yak fleece to Golmud. It can be a long wait. They can hardly believe their luck that the government is building such a huge project to save them hitchhiking.
我们就不用坐车呗，铁路的一个小站就在这上面呗，所以我们就不用坐车了，这就方便得多了。
It takes up to 3 days to drive the long and sometimes treacherous road to Lhasa. China has dreamt of building a railway here ever since it invaded. But each time it's tried to extend the track, the sheer scale of the operation has defeated it. Now it hopes new technology will make it possible. The headquarters have as many engineers as construction workers. But it will take at least 6 years and as many as 50,000 workers to complete the project. Estimates of the cost run as high as $10 billion US. The further we travelled, the more extraordinary it seemed that China was even attempting this project. The line will have to cross 1,100 kilometres of mountain and permafrost. Engineers will need to keep the permafrost frozen in summer to prevent the line sinking into the marsh. They plan to construct hundreds of kilometres of underground freezer units. All this in nearly impossible working conditions. This is Kunlun Mountain, one of the highest passes the train line will need to cross. At nearly 5,000 metres, the air is thin, it's difficult to work, and they'll be working right through the winters at temperatures of -20. It is an awesome project. And you have to wonder why a country as poor as China would put so many resources and untold billions to build a line across all this to one of its poorest provinces. There was only one place to discuss this without Chinese interference. Dharamsala, home of Tibet's government in exile, and its leader, the Dalai Lama. He told me the railway's real purpose would be to increase China's grip and to ravage Tibet's resources.
The Chinese always sort of has very much concerned or afraid that Tibet one day might separate from China. So now recent years, you see, it seems they really make every effort, you see, to counter for that sort of risk. They just, you see, they concentrate the maximum exploitation about nature resources. They no respect or no concern about environment damage.
This Himalayan town in the north of India has been the Dalai Lama's home since he fled China in 1959. It's become a beacon of Tibetan culture and independence. Every year, more than 3,000 Tibetans make the dangerous crossing from China to come here. The Dalai Lama greets every new arrival. Some of the Dalai Lama's followers are smitten foreigners. His charisma has helped keep the Tibetan issue alive in the West. But he's even more popular with his former subjects. Many of them will soon return to Tibet. While some flee persecution, others evade Chinese border patrols simply to see relatives here or to have this audience. They are all told to continue the struggle for freedom.
The Tibet problem is happened not due to civil war or major disaster, but usually I describe Tibet problem is since the new guest come without proper invitation.
And stayed.
So you see that guest come with gun. So that's the problem.
The activities of the Tibetan exiles here continue to irritate the Chinese government. But what concerns it far more is that so many Tibetans inside China also continue to see the Dalai Lama as their leader. So much so that thousands risk their lives to come here just to see him. All this after half a century under Chinese control.
今天对于西藏各族人民来说是个不同寻常的日子。50年前的今天，中央人民政府和原西藏地方政府共同签订了关于和平解放西藏办法的协议，也就是著名的17条协议。从此，西藏的历史翻开了崭新的一页。
China uses each anniversary of its invasion to paint the Dalai Lama as a feudal tyrant and Chinese military as freedom fighters.
中央人民政府在西藏广大人民和爱国人士的支持下，迅速平息了叛乱，并抓住时机，在西藏进行了民主改革，废除了政教合一的封建农奴制度。西藏人民第一次成为了国家的主人。
只要我们在共产党的这个领导下，认真的这个实施十五规划纲要，西藏的明天呢会变得更加美好。
更多的嘛是呢，去全部注意。 所说的你呢，去年开始准备呢，这个草啊套件的，根据这套的呢，亚界皮松草的，你的穷松。
Tsering Migyu was once another true believer in the communist system. A Tibetan born in Lhasa, he rose to senior positions in the police service and military intelligence. But his growing disillusionment with Chinese rule led him to flee to India last year. He says there is no doubt China's building the railway to increase control.
最大停车变成了95동기 능력을 강화되게 되다. 한 4 동기 이내에라, 한 3당 이내에라, 한 10개 이내에라. 그게 나는 지금 동기 타고 총람 이내에라, 쌍람 이내에라, 통라 이내에라. 그러니까 지금 염이 강돼요. 그래 통이었어요, 아마. 그러 나는 친구는 그래 하람 매워서. 뒤에서는 쇼는 병원을 기니도 뭐지 지기 그 섬주 거란 말이야. 마음으로 섬주 말이야. 그 병원을 간 중원이 있어. 이간 내지 왜 때문에.
But China is genuinely puzzled by the continuing international criticism of its occupation. It believes a half-century of communist-sponsored development has brought immeasurable improvements.
是从海岸走向光明，从落后走向进步，从封闭走向开放的50年。
We were able to test China's claims of openness on our trip to Qinghai. On the last day, we were taken to the Tibetan lamasery of Kumbum. This is a sacred place to the Tibetans. It's also near the village where the Dalai Lama was born. Today, it's a showcase of officially sanctioned religious freedom. We were even allowed to question the ruling committee of lamas.
This one is the living border of this lamasery.
I asked them how much control the Communist Party had over the monastery.
In religion, so we cannot say.
The discomfort was immediate.
Yeah.
So could you finish the answer, please?
So we cannot say control this kind of a word.
How much reverence do you have for the Dalai Lama, and what place do you feel he should have in Tibetan society?
We only know the circumstance of this lamasery. About the others, we know a little. So.
The Dalai Lama comes from this monastery, so I think it's a natural question to ask.
Abruptly, the press conference was over. It was a question the lamas dared not answer. 3 years ago, the lamasery's Amat fled to the United States after China pressured him to disown the Dalai Lama.
So, they want a Buddhist at the same time should be absolute loyal to the Communist Party. That's rather difficult. So sometimes they are making every effort to achieve some impossible thing.
You mean you want me to leave?
No, I'm asking your permission.
Okay, I leave.
No.
You travel by yourself.
I asked our senior minder, the Foreign Ministry's Mr. Liu, why the lamas were so nervous about speaking to us. He denied there had been any pressure.
Answer any question they wish. This is your right to raise your questions and their right to answer your questions.
Okay. Why do you think they're scared to answer?
Why do you think I'm here scaring the religious people here? Why do you think they are scared by the Chinese government
They obviously
authorities?
were scared to answer the question.
Do you think they are scared by the Chinese authorities?
Well,
I'm not sure.
So yes.
So now everything is on your television, right?
Yes.
It seems that you are trying to scare the Chinese government authorities.
I'm trying to scare the Chinese government.
Yeah.
I'm not in a position to
You
scare
are
the Chinese
threatening.
government.
You are
No,
threatening.
I'm not a journalist. I'm just asking questions.
You are threatening the
I was wondering
Chinese
what else
government
you were trying
authorities, and you are trying to scare the religious people here.
Outside, 2 monks told us privately they'd been warned not to speak to us. There was an obvious presence of uniformed police and even more plainclothes police following our every move. Khum Bum turned out to be another example of how marginalised Tibetans have become. 2 Han Chinese women were even dressed as Tibetans for Han Chinese tourists to take photos. For a place of contemplation, it was seething with tension. When a Chinese-American photographer came too close, a Lama attacked him. After half a century, many Tibetans remain unwilling subjects of China's rule. But time is on China's side. The Dalai Lama is 66 and may not live beyond the decade. By then, China will have completed its railway. Han Chinese will pour in by the trainload, day after day after day. If Beijing is sincere in its pledge to help Tibet, the railway may bring unprecedented benefits. But after half a century of what many call genocide, the worst may be yet to come.